Some people subtly make an impression on us and leave a lasting impression before our paths diverge. But what if one day when Ellen DeGeneres discovered that her old neighbor Henry was now living in a nursing home, she had a queasy feeling in her chest because she remembered him from her childhood fixing old radios in his backyard, telling her stories about the world, and laughing with a joy that could brighten anyone's day. However, the next morning, Ellen got into her car and drove directly to the facility. But as soon as she arrived, she sensed something was wrong. The hallways were eerily quiet. The air felt heavy fluorescent lights cast a cold, pale glow on the worn-out walls. Wheelchairs were parked against the walls, and the hurried footsteps of the nurses echoed faintly in the distance. As she approached the front desk, the receptionist looked up and her eyes widened in shock. "What are you doing here, Ellen DeGeneres?" Ellen smiled politely, but her thoughts were already on Henry. "I'm here to visit an old friend. His name is Henry," she said, and the receptionist's happy expression changed instantly. "Oh, yes, of course. But he might be a little tired right now," Ellen said, narrowing her eyes. She moved cautiously but determinedly down the hall until she reached Henry's door, pushing it open slightly. There, she found her old friend Henry sitting on his bed, but the lively, cheerful man she had known was gone. His eyes were vacant, his face was pale, and the room exuded a strong sense of loneliness. Ellen entered the room and sat carefully at the edge of the bed. "Henry." "It was me, Ellen." The old man slowly raised his head, as though it were difficult to recognize her for a time. Then he just gazed. Then a small grin came to his lips. "Ellen, what are you doing here?" Ellen's chest constricted. Friends do visit, don't they? However, the sadness in Henry's eyes informed her that something was seriously amiss. Although Henry appeared pleased to see Ellen, there was a noticeable dread in his expression. His hands were trembling and his eyes were darting away. Ellen saw this and said gently, "Henry, is everything okay here?" After a prolonged period of quiet during which Henry bent his head slightly, he muttered, "This place isn't a good place, Ellen." Ellen asked, "What do you mean is something wrong?" as a shiver went down her spine. "They mistreat us. They delay our medications. Sometimes they don't even feed us. And if we complain, they threaten to keep quiet," Henry said, taking a long breath and looking out into the corner of the room. Ellen's eyes widened in disbelief at how this could have happened and who was responsible. "Had Nurse Martha, she runs this place, everything is under her control. If we speak out, they cut off our visits, and then no one hears from us again," Henry muttered, his eyes darting toward the door in a low, shaking voice. As Ellen processed Henry's words, a shadow flickered outside the door. Ellen instinctively turned her head, but the hallway was empty. But something was obvious, that someone had been listening. Ellen maintained her composure and smiled reassuringly. "Henry, we need to keep talking about this, but not here." Ellen took a deep breath, reached for Henry's hands, and said, "Don't worry, Henry. Someone is listening." For the first time in a long time, Ellen knew that something was happening inside this nursing home, and she wasn't going to let it go. Though his eyes were clouded by reluctance, Henry nodded and said, "Ellen, you shouldn't stay too long, because they might target you too." At that moment, the chief nurse's door suddenly sprang open. Martha smiled practically as she walked in, but her eyes were chilly. "Ellen DeGeneres, what a surprise." Ellen got up and nodded courteously, saying, "I'm just here to visit an old friend. Is there a problem?" Martha folded her arms across her chest and said, "I'm afraid visiting hours are almost over. Mr. Henry needs his rest." Ellen narrowed her eyes a little. "I don't think I was bothering him, but I didn't notice that for a moment. Everyone in this place seemed scared of you." Martha's fake smile faltered. "Mr. DeGeneres, I have the authority to limit your visits if you ask too many questions." Ellen felt a steady rage building in her breast, but she realized that speaking louder wouldn't help, so she had to be wise. She took a long breath, looked at Martha, and then, "I guess there's nothing wrong with making those guidelines public." Martha's face tensed as she realized for the first time that Ellen wasn't just a guest. Rather, she was a real threat. But for Ellen, there was no turning back now that the truth had to be revealed. Ellen left the nursing home with a storm brewing inside of her. The image of Henry and the other elderly residents being neglected, mistreated, and silenced would not leave her mind. As soon as she got into her car, She grabbed her phone and called her team. Found me everything on this nursing home. Any complaints, who works here, their financial records. Give me all the information you can. If something illegal is occurring, I won't let it go unpunished. Her assistant contacted her back a few hours later and said, "What we found is horrifying." A chilly fury solidified in Ellen's bones as she perused the documents that had been sent to her. The facility was run by Martha, and financial records revealed that she had been funding a lavish lifestyle while lowering costs for basic care. Over the previous 5 years, dozens of complaints have been filed, all of which have been rejected for lack of evidence that residents have been starved, denied medication, and prevented from seeing their families. This was systematic abuse rather than merely poor management. Ellen gritted her teeth and said, "This isn't over." She went back to the nursing home that night. But this time she wasn't a visitor. Rather, she was there to find the truth once and for all. As Ellen presented all the evidence to her team, one idea took over her mind. The old inhabitants' abuse, negligence, and mistreatment would no longer go unnoticed if this nursing home was closed as soon as the sun rose. Ellen made sure that this injustice was brought to light by contacting the media and human rights groups. Former staff members came out to acknowledge that they had resigned after seeing the abuse, and an urgent press conference was organized to expose the horrors of malnutrition, medication refusal, and threats against the residents. When Martha's extravagant lifestyle, which was financed by the suffering of the elderly, was made public with indisputable evidence, the news went viral nationwide, and outrage quickly spread on social media under the hashtag #SigForItElderly. However, the most impactful moment occurred when Ellen spoke live on air. This is not just about one nursing home. It's a reality that thousands of elderly people face every day. And if we keep quiet, we are abandoning them to perish in the shadows. Following her broadcast, law enforcement acted quickly. Authorities raided the nursing home, permanently closed it, moved the residents to safer settings where they would receive proper care, and, most importantly, arrested head nurse Martha on charges of criminal misconduct and neglect abuse. Later that day, Ellen paid Henry a final visit, and as he held her hand, tears filled his eyes. "I never thought anyone would fight for us, Ellen," he said, holding his hand tightly. Ellen smiled warmly and said, "Henry, no one in this world should ever feel forgotten. Because sometimes one act of bravery can transform an entire life." Hundreds of others who had suffered in silence were heard that day in addition to Henry's voice.